Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
You.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Hey.
Good to see you guys. I am going to share. Huh?
Who are you again?
Yeah, thanks, Keone. Appreciate that. You mean you
She's
don't miss me?
unforgettable. Come on.
You mean I can go away like for months at a time and you guys would be cool? No, I'm just kidding.
Not a chance, Lisa.
Time.
Not a
Let's say that.
Yeah, let's not go crazy, right? Okay, I wanted to share this with you since we're getting ready for an exciting event in 2 days. So this happens to be a post that my coach posted or my former coach posted on his page. And it says, the only true security in life comes from knowing that every single day you are improving yourself in some way. So sometimes we get caught up in the thing that we need to do or the results that maybe we're not getting and that we want to get. And we can get really caught up in that as opposed to remember that this is a journey, right? It's not a destination. So it's all about growth. And as long as you're continuing to improve yourself, that is your true security. It is the only thing you really can rely on, count on, control. And that said, so I wanted to remind you guys coming up on Friday, if you have not yet registered for the Tony Robbins workshop with Anthony, that is, or DeMario, he is going to be hosting that, and that is Friday at 9 a.m. our time. And you all should have received a follow-up email yesterday for it. It's called, Cheryl's it called Unleash the Power Within Workshop, or it's Peak Performance, right? So Peak Performance, they can also register through the calendar. Is that right, Cheryl? I want to make sure that everybody who has not registered gets registered. It's free.
Yes, that's correct. It's in the calendar, and an email was sent out yesterday afternoon about 3:15. And I can put the link in the chat box too.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's New World, New You Challenge.
No, okay, so that was confusing, Joanne. So they actually sent us coincidentally, which really made it confusing. I wish they hadn't done that.
Oh,
because
I'm glad
now
I said something.
when we registered, we got on their list for Tony Robbins. So what happened is they started sending us other things that they're doing. So the New You, that challenge, that's not the Friday event. That is a separate thing that they're doing. So the event that we want you guys to participate in on Friday is the Peak Performance Workshop. Cheryl's putting that in the chat box. Who has registered for that already? Okay. And then who
question.
Yes.
For the ones that are in Ignite, is there a way of watching that after Ignite, or what's your suggestion there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do I have any Ignite?
Ignite is being recorded. I don't know about the Peak Performance, but my intent, and I'm in Ignite.
No, Cheryl, Ignite is not being recorded live.
Well, not live, right, but recordings of the classes are available, so kind of your call.
Yeah, I don't know if the Peak Performance Workshop is going to be recorded or not. We can check with our rep there. Yes, question, Michelle?
Yeah, it also overlaps some other things, including Rams Brokers Forum and a CCIM Hawaii event. So Friday morning at 9 is peak time.
Yep.
I will be there.
I mean, it's gonna happen, you guys. It's gonna happen. There's always gonna be, we do a lot of training and there's a lot of great stuff going on. So you may have to make your decision about what you want to do. So we can check Cheryl, why don't you just check and see if the peak performance thing is going to be recorded? I really don't know, honestly. Now,
I'll
and
reach
keep
out.
in mind, it's a big, I mean, we've probably got, I don't even know what the registration looks like now, but we did invite other people to attend too. So it's being coordinated by us and for you guys. And we also invited other people to attend. So there will be other realtors that are members of the board. There may be people from all the islands because we did send out an invitation to them. They did say we could open it up to as many people as we would like in our real estate community. So we did, and they're not charging us anything. Now, most likely the end of the program, they're going to say, hey, take Tony's, live virtual workshop that's coming up. I mean, that's, of course, part of it is to get the word out about what Tony does. And of course, he does great things. So it may be things that you're interested in doing. If not, I mean, there's no obligation to do anything. And we get an hour and a half, close to an hour and a half of really great content. So, okay, so that is Friday. Any other questions about that? Okay, cool. So what I want to talk a little bit about today is negotiation. We do, of course, teach some negotiation strategies I know the Ignite training has negotiation. We used to do a class periodically that was on negotiation. It's been requested that we bring that back again. I know Kent Leong, who served in a negotiation role for, hundreds and hundreds of transactions. He taught a class for us. We can invite him back again. I bring it up now though, because there have been situations recently that I have talked to some of you about or have been involved in negotiations, especially when we're dealing with a market where we're competing to get our buyers' properties, right? Inventory's low. So your ability to negotiate and facilitate that process with your client based on what there is in their best interest and what they want, it's an art form, and it is critical right now to be able to help them get the properties that they want. So I think it's a really important thing that we touch on. And so I wanted to give you just a breakdown of negotiation and a reminder of some of the things and the strategies that work really well and for you guys to consider when you're in this situation. And I'm happy to hear if you guys also want to share specific experiences that you've had lately that would help everybody on the call learn a little bit more about what works or maybe what doesn't work or what happened, so we can learn from each other's experience. So initially, I'm just going to cover some basic principles. And I want to remind you guys of now this may not be the case with every brokerage. Keller Williams has a belief system, right? We have a belief system. It's on our walls in our offices. And it's called the Y4C2Ts, which stands for different things. So who can tell me what the W stands for in Y4C2Ts in our belief system with Keller Williams?
I don't know.
Win-win or no deal.
Yes, Brendan, win-win or no deal. Are you in the office looking at it right now? Yes.
I'm surrounded by it.
You're surrounded by it. Okay, so win-win or no deal. Why is that important? And am I bringing that up when we're talking about negotiation?
Because if everybody doesn't win, it's not a good deal.
Love it. Yes, Karen, that is exactly right. That is our approach to negotiation as a company in general, as a whole. Now, there are different ways you can approach it, and specifically, that win-win is one strategy in negotiation, and it's called collaboration. It's referred to as collaboration and negotiation. What are some of the other ways you can negotiate that may not be collaboration? Anybody have an idea about some of the other things that people do when they're negotiating that is not a win-win situation or collaborative? Think about it from the sake of win-win. Use that as an example. What's another option?
Well, if you're working with an
Win-lose.
agent- Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, win-lose. I win, you lose, right? So if I
Right.
win, you lose, that's competing or that's domination. That's the strategy. It's actually a negotiation strategy. I win, you lose. Okay. Now, another one is I lose, you win. Now, why would I do that? Well, people do. I mean, if you've ever been on one side of the negotiation where with the other agent or the other party, and they go, okay, you win, right? And that is, that's accommodating, right? That's exactly accommodation or obliging, okay? And then there's a you and I both lose. That's a you lose, I lose, okay? That's an avoidance strategy or situation. And then there's the last one would be compromise, which is, we both win some and we both lose some. So we don't actually get what we want really, but we're compromising. So we're not really stoked about the deal. We're figuring it out. We're compromising, which can happen. I would say that is probably when you're not dealing with a win-win, that's probably the most frequent situation that I see. Okay, so how do we successfully negotiate or make something be a win-win? Well, if you're a buyer's agent, what are some of the things that you can do? Say you're on the buy side and you're negotiating, because that's where a lot of us are right now. What are some of the things that you can do to help create a successful or win-win situation? How do you play a part in setting that up as a buyer's agent? What are some of the things that you can do prior to submitting your offer?
Find out what they
I
want.
having I would say that having the buyer get pre-approved and have a pre-approval letter ready.
Kayla, absolutely. Yes, you definitely want to make sure that they're pre-approved, because that's going to help strengthen your position in negotiation and maybe even make it possible for you to have that conversation. I love that.
I always
Jonathan,
pre-warn.
sorry, hang on one sec, Karen. I heard Jonathan say something to the effect of know what they want. Is that what you said, Jonathan? Can you?
Yeah. Just have a good conversation with your buyers, find out what their ideal scenario is. And that way, whether it works out with one property, you know exactly where you're going for.
Love that. Get all the information, or at least where they think they're at, right? How high are you willing to go? Like, what are some of the questions you're asking, right? How high are you willing to go? How do you feel about this property, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, I absolutely want to do everything I can to make sure that I get this property. Where are you, right, on the scale? Because it helps you to understand what they really want, where they're at. Because sometimes when we think our job, so we tell buyers, right? I mean, I know I do. I tell buyer, look, my job is to get you this property at the best price I can. However, my job is to get you this property, right? So there's a line there if they want it. Now, sometimes the buyer may say, I want it, but I only want it here. I don't want it here. So then it's not your job anymore to necessarily get them the property, because they may not want it. Does that make sense? Depending on where they're at. So what's another thing, Karen, you mentioned that you could do before?
Actually, that's an excellent suggestion. But the other thing I do is I kind of help manage their expectations and what is going to happen in advance. Like, for instance, I tell them about, buying property on Maui. Some people won't respond if you come in too low, because they feel their property is worth X, Y, or Z, especially when you get into the higher numbers. And I also, tell them about the inspection. Don't expect them to fix everything. They don't have to, so I just try to manage their expectations when we're writing the offer, or even before we do, so they know what's going on.
That is a great point. Managing expectations. I love that, Karen. And there are a lot of different ways that you can do that. So another way that you can manage expectations, which you kind of alluded to, which is the process of, okay, this is what's customary. This is what we see. Now, it doesn't mean every negotiation is different. Doesn't mean they're going to respond this way, but we understand based on our experience X. Or, is there a psychology to negotiating? Do people get emotional in the process of negotiating? So how do you have them understand that on a level, or educate them to keep them out of that place? Because when things escalate into a very emotional place, is that helpful or hurtful in your negotiation process?
Never a good thing.
Not a good thing. Not a good thing. So another thing that you can do that I really like to do in terms of managing expectations to stay in line with what Karen's talking about is help the buyer understand the pricing strategy of that property. Now, if you're a great agent and you've done that homework, right? Why do you run comps? Well, you run comps because you want to give them an idea of a scale or a range and what they might offer in terms of what's been accepted. You might look at list to sale price ratios in the area, give them that information. A big one is if you understand, because you're also a listing agent, maybe not for this property, but if you have been a listing agent, so you understand pricing strategies. If you can put yourself in the mindset of the seller and that agent and potentially the conversations they had where they've listed the property, you understand. Now, you may not be 100% right, but I guarantee a lot of the time, you're going to understand why they priced it where they did and where they expect to end up. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, for example, if you see all the comps, you're going for a property that's 2.5 million and you see all the comps are at 2.2 million or 2.25 million, okay, that's around the range of what that price would be. You may, now, you're not 100% sure, but could it be that they priced it higher with the expectation that they're going to leave room for negotiation and they expect to get about 2.25? Is that possible?
Yes.
Do you see that a lot? We see that a lot. It's the most common pricing strategy agents use with sellers, is that right down the middle point, right? So there's a low price point, there's a high price point. This is what they expect to get. That's where they want to end up. And it's usually the minimum of what that seller will accept. So again, if you understand that, now you're not, again, 100% of the time, but I would say if you see that pricing strategy was used when you look at the comps, probably 85% of the time, that's going to be where you are going to end up, right? So if you can start to look at that and again, manage the expectations of the buyer to help them create a win-win scenario. And is that a win-win? I mean, if you end up less than what the list price is, but what the seller wants at market, is that a win-win?
If everybody's happy, it is.
But yeah, depends on the situation, but that's the expectation. Okay, so a couple other things. Yes, question?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people offering like overbuying a property because they want to secure it because of the low inventory. And I'm just curious, like when does that overbuying come purely from the buyer because they really want it and they want to make sure that they secure it? Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, you're talking about coming in over list price?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to depend on the situation, because the first question is, what is the list price and where is that in terms of whether that really is, what the market is worth. Now, obviously it's worth what a buyer is willing to pay. However, if you look at the comps, is that property listed? So that's the first thing you will look at, is that property listed in fair market range? Okay. If it's listed below fair market range and they're coming in over list price, but it's still fair market range, then they're not, you know what I mean? They're not necessarily overpaying based on fair market range. However, in some situations, if a buyer is in love with a property, they really want it. And again, you would know this by having the conversations, and they want you to help them get it. And there are multiple offers and they're willing to pay more, and they can, meaning financially, or they're going to come in with cash. Obviously, you have to have conversations if they're getting financing and the appraisal and all of that. But if that is what they want, then yeah, your job is to help them get that. So that's their choice. If they are going to pay more than what the comps are, or even what maybe an appraised value may be. I mean, I've represented people in that situation multiple times. A common reason somebody may do that I've seen, and you guys can all chime in, is say there's a ohana on the property, there's a cottage on the property, and they're going to have a long-term rental there. And maybe there's, I mean, we see it where say an appraiser comes in and maybe not everything's permitted, for example, or so their appraised value may be coming in lower, but they know that they're going to get rental income from the long-term rental for the ohana. I've had people overpay in that situation before. So based on an appraisal. Does that help answer your question? I'm going to read some of these comments too that you guys put in.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, So Lee, okay, through buyer's consultation, Stacy's saying that's where you can find out information. Cheryl says prioritize their wants and needs to prepare for what may be negotiated. That's great too. Robert says strengthen your relationship with your clients. That's a really good point, Robert, because you want to, having a better relationship with your client through a negotiation process can really help, because they, you know, supposedly they hire you because they know you, like you, and trust you. And even though we don't tell them what to do, when we give them information, how they receive that may make a difference based on our relationship with them. So it's important. And Lee says communication with the agent on the other side is key. So let me talk about that a little bit too. That is a huge one. And I see people fail at this and lose the deal because of it. And it's a shame. So when we talk about creating win-wins and not being competitive or domineering in a negotiation, and you don't have to volunteer this, have you known an agent, or has it been you in the past, that gets emotionally involved and or maybe maybe had a bad situation or a bad transaction with the agent on the other side, or maybe the agent on the other side isn't super great or fun to work with, and it becomes about something other than what the clients want, meaning you become competitive with the other person. You start fighting, you start to get emotional, right? That is not helpful. So one of the things that you can do as far as communicating with the other agent is, first of all, have a good relationship with other agents, like in the community. That can go a long way when you're dealing with negotiation. Should an agent prevent you from seeing a property? Should an agent prevent you from or get in the middle of an offer that you're submitting for a property where they're representing the client? Should they have any effect on that? No. In reality, have they in the past? Yes. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do, that I would suggest that you do to be highly successful in an effective negotiation, is contact the listing agent before you submit an offer. Now, why would you contact the listing agent before you submit an offer, and what questions might you ask that agent to help you? Nancy.
Is it still available? Have you had any offers? Is there any offers on the table?
Great. Okay. Is it available? Have you had any offers on the table, which can inform you about what kind of competition we have, what kind of strategy we might use or talk to the buyers about? Great. What's another good question for the listing?
I always ask if they have a title company that they like to use, and how much I would like to work with that agent, because I've always, admired them. And is there any information you can give me about the sellers or the property and what they're looking for?
Great. So any information about the sellers, building the relationship with the other agent. I love that. What else?
I was going to say, how about how motivated is your seller? That could be important.
How motivated they
may for that offer. Yeah.
Great. They may give you some information. So even if the listing agent is not supposed to share certain things with you, do we still want to ask?
Yes.
Because who are we working for?
The buyer.
For buyer.
Right. Now, here's my favorite question of all time, out of all the questions that I ask in negotiation prior to submitting an offer. Is there anything that would be a deal breaker for the seller?
Oh, that's a good one.
It has won many a deal over other offers, because I knew, and I'm going to give you an example of one of the, so what might be a deal breaker? Actually, let me ask you guys, what do you think? So if I ask that question, what might a listing agent say? Think about you as a listing agent. What might you say?
Asking for the furniture if they don't want to sell it.
Furniture, contents, inclusions. Absolutely. That is one that you may not know about that you can find out that way. That's huge. Yep. So why do a counter on that? Next, Michelle.
Closing timeline, either too short or too long, depending on what their needs are.
That is the biggest one that I see. And that is the one that has allowed us to win a lot of deals, because nobody asked that question and the agent did not give that information prior to asking, and they did not know. Most people assume that a seller wants to close in what, less time or more time?
Less.
Right. Most people assume that
Less.
it's less time. Is it always less?
No.
No. Sometimes it's longer. They want a longer escrow. So I perfect example. I got a deal where there were multiple offers. I asked that question and the listing agent said, oh, they need a 60-day escrow because they're doing whatever they were doing. They needed more time and had to be at least 60 days. So we were the only one that put in 60 days. And other terms were similar. Okay, so that's a great example. Another one, so timeline. Oh, Stacy's saying contingency of the sale of the buyer's property. So that is, so are you saying, Stacy, that then the seller is buying another property or our buyer needs to sell to buy? We need to ask our buyer that question if they need to sell to buy.
In a transaction where I have the listing, they need
Yep.
to buy a replacement property, put in an offer on another property, and the listing agent and selling agent was the same person, seller and listing agent, same person. And, it mattered because they had to sell their house first to buy that new one.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
coordinating and cooperating
Correct.
on anything that they might need, like exchanges, right? We've seen clauses in there where one of the parties is doing an exchange and we need to cooperate. Okay. So calling the other agent and asking questions. I mean, just keep asking questions, terms, specific, anything that would be a negotiated item per the purchase contract, which of course it's everything, but based on the PUCAs, those are good guides and questions to ask. Couple other things is to have the conversation with your buyer, again, about how much they want the property. If they were to lose it, what's our plan B? So knowing what would be in their best interest ultimately. Now, here's another thing that I never want to hear any of you say that I've heard other agents say, and I've got a good comeback for you. It's kind of a cheeky comeback. You don't have to say it that way, but it sets a good example. Some of you have heard me say this, which is when you say, okay, first of all, let's talk about verbal offers. Now, I'm guessing what our instructors teach, although I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I'm going to give you my opinion about verbal offers. What do you think my opinion about verbal offers is?
Don't do it.
Do that.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
No way.
Period.
If it's not in writing, it's not real.
It's not in writing. It doesn't exist. And we just don't want to do that. We also don't want to say anything or represent anything on behalf of our client. Have you ever heard an agent say, so say you're the buyer's agent, and has the listing agent ever said to you, my client will never do X. My client will never do Y.
Yep.
Okay. Don't ever say that, please. The other thing that you can say as a comeback, so what do you say if an agent says my client will never, again, we're not doing verbal offers, but sometimes people get into conversations about it, or the listing agent will say my seller will never take less than X. And it may have been based on a conversation they had. However, when they say that, what is a good response? If you're going to,
I can only write an offer at what my client's willing to write.
okay, so I'm going to write an offer. I'm going to take my client's direction and we'll submit an offer. Okay. Yes, Michelle.
I'm sure that was true at the time of the conversation, but our situation changes every day. So maybe today they may be willing to do something different.
Yeah. So again, it's another thing to put in writing, right? So if they say, and it's good information for you to know if that's how the agent operates. Again, they're making a decision for their client. They don't know what their client would do and not do. My old broker used to respond by saying, oh, I'm sorry. When did you go on title? I wasn't aware that you were on title to the property. When did that happen? Okay. And now, silly, but it proves a point. They don't know. Do we know what our clients are going to do all the time? Do we know when we present them something? Do they surprise us sometimes and go, I'll take it?
Yes.
Right? So we never want to do that. And if we know that we're dealing with an agent that way, what is something that we can do to assure that they're not getting in the way of correspondence?
Put it in writing.
Yes. You're going to send them an email, you're going to write an offer, and then you're going to correspond with them in email. And when you correspond with them in email, it's going to be information directly from your client, right? Your buyer, because it's going to be information that they must give to the seller so the seller can make their own decision. Okay. So those are just some things. Let me just see if there's anything else I want to.
I would
Thing too
also
is-
add is that yes, you send it in writing. Yes, you follow up with the offer, but then send them a text so that you have that to let them know that they need to go look in their mailbox in their email. Because I had a situation I dealt with a few weeks ago, and she didn't check her email, and so her offers, the client didn't end up with the offer in the timeline of being received.
Okay,
And
great.
Said was the agent never called her to tell her.
Okay, so call or text, send the email, call or text, follow up. Okay, great. Robert says, let's see where the negotiation goes. Send it in writing anyway. Always send it in writing. Okay, so just some key tips on successful negotiations. Number one is to concentrate on interests, not positions. So no positional bargaining, like what is in the interest of the parties, right? What do we want to focus on? Let's not talk about or get emotional. We already talked about that. It's not about like needs, desires, concerns, fears, anything that can be emotional. It's what do we need to have happen? And the more we understand about what the seller, what's a deal breaker for the seller, what's a deal breaker for the buyer, the more we can focus on interests, meaning of the parties, of what they want out of the whole process, than just positioning for winning a negotiation. The second is to concentrate on the problem or the negotiation at hand, not the people, right? That's where we get into trouble when we start to talk about people playing games. Well, they're just doing this to whatever. So if your buyer starts to get that kind of a reaction from something they're getting on a piece of paper, what can you do to help them steer clear of that?
Concentrate on the problem.
Let's focus on the paper. Let's focus on what we're seeing and writing. Let's not interpret. Let's not assume. We can say, hey, this is the strategy for negotiation, but we need to focus on what we've got here to work with and not what the people are doing. Okay. We do want to respect everybody's position. We want to explore options. So, we want to be creative in negotiation too, right? How many times have you started doing this by the book and then you realize what somebody wants is not something that would typically be included or involved? And you can be creative. Michelle is very, very good at putting together creative transactions. I think more than I've ever seen in anybody. So if you need some creativity, go to Michelle. She's like crazy creative. Okay. And then use objective criteria. So to prevent somebody from getting advantageous results by being stubborn, make sure that the final agreement reflects an objective standard that does not depend on the will of the party. So you want to be objective on criteria. Again, same thing we're talking about, just stay objective, work on the deal. The more information you know, the better position you're going to be in. Okay. And then also just understanding negotiation strategies. So anything else, let me look and see what you guys put. Stacy sent it in writing. Anyways, seek help from an experienced agent, your coach, your broker, even experienced agents, seek help from fellow agents, lots of help available. Yeah. Another thing is like, if you guys, even if you have experience doing this a lot, but you're dealing with them, if you're dealing with a multiple offer situation and you want to be doing everything you can to help secure that. For example, I talk to people a lot that aren't aware of escalation clauses and haven't used them. So that's one really great example where I've helped both very seasoned agents and new agents to get a deal for their buyer because they put in an escalation clause, which more people are doing now, but there's also strategies around escalation clauses that you can do to make it better than if somebody else is using one. So and there's, and go through, I mean, another thing you can do that's kind of cool is we have a lot of templates. So we have our contract templates in your zip form, but we also have clause templates. So what if you go through and you read through all the clauses and the templates that we have pre-programmed in your zip form, you're going to start to, your mind will start to be open about what's possible of different things that you can do or things, situations that have come up in the past to be creative. Okay, anything else you guys on negotiations? Yes, Michelle.
Not on negotiations. I had a couple items, but I'm going to
Okay.
save them most for next week. I just have
Okay.
one item I want to share for today that's timely. National Association of Realtor Member Benefit Program just rolled out a new benefit. It is group term life insurance and accidental death and dismemberment insurance. It's group. We have over 1 million members nationwide. You're going to have killer rates. These are underwritten by New York Life, and they have 2 categories. Under age 60 is their main group term, and then they have a mature group term for 60 and over. So I really encourage anyone, if you don't carry term life insurance as a self-employed person, to consider doing so. This group policy will issue insurance for you between $50,000 and $1 million. So it's not going to meet all your needs, particularly if you're a top producer where you're looking at 10 or 12 times your annual income. But for most of our agents, it will meet your needs. Good rates, great underwriting company, New York Life, very established. I encourage you to go in and look at NAR member benefits.
Awesome. That's great info. Thank you for that, Michelle.
Yeah.
Awesome, you guys. Anything else?
I have
Yoni,
a question.
Aisha, yes.
Okay, so I'm just a little bit confused because we were talking before about, having the negotiation with the other agent and keeping everything friendly. And then towards the last few points about the negotiation, when you said that we should make sure everything is in writing, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you saying that if you had a verbal conversation and you didn't like it, then you would anyway put in an offer and send it in writing, even though the other agent told you this is what I think the seller would not accept?
Oh yeah, hands
100%.
down. Yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. Never go off their word. Ever, never.
And to add to that, and to hit the point home, is the reason why we're saying put it in writing is because they have to submit it if it's in writing.
That's right.
If it's verbal, it's just whatever,
They have
right?
no
But the
choice.
reason why we're saying put it in writing is they have to submit it then. So you just
Yeah.
say, okay, thank you, and then you put it in writing. Every
Oh,
person.
wow. Okay.
And they have
Yeah.
to sign reject it if they don't want it.
Yeah.
Right. Then you turned it to your buyer's favor because you
Correct.
tried, it did not work. Other than just because the other agent told you that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to do a thorough job for your client too. And that's the same with email. That's why you send correspondence in an email. Even if you have a conversation, you're going to send it in an email. And if you say anything that's a communication from your client to the seller, again, they have to submit that. They have to give them that information. So even not just an offer, but any correspondence that you want to make sure gets from buyer to seller in writing and show that it's from the buyer to the seller, and they have to give it to them.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep. All right, you guys, thank you
And
so
you
much.
might think,
Yeah.
you might think that it's weird too. They're off the buyer's offer,
Yeah.
and you're kind of like, meh. Well, let's just put it in, right? I always try to give the first round to the client, right? And then when you get the counter, then you start talking a little bit more tough, if you will.
Hey, can I ask a quick question, you guys?
Yes,
Before you
Baron.
go? So this is a little bit off topic, but it's still similar in terms of negotiation. I just did my first listing presentation with my neighbor. He lives
Yay.
like 2 doors down, and I felt really good about it. I was really prepared. And before I sat down with him, I asked, because he said, just so you know, I'm going to interview 3 agents. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And I said, well, how will you know
when you met the right agent? What will they need to share with you? And he said, I just want to see what you can offer me in terms of marketing my house for the highest price. And I was like, oh, in the least amount of time. He's like, yeah, exactly. And he's like, and I want to see what's different. So I went and sat down with him, prepared, had a listing agreement with me. And I said, have I impressed you enough to earn your business today? And he said, well, remember I told you, like, I'm going to talk to 3 agents. And after the fact, I talked to Dan Palomino, and he was like, you should have asked, what haven't I shared with you that, you know, what haven't I shared with you that what haven't you heard that I need to talk to you about to do business today? But like, I don't know, like, I'm just getting vibes from this person that no matter what I say, no matter what I do, like, he's not going to do it. But he told me he's not going to do it, not necessarily with me, but until he talks to the 2 other agents. And I asked if he would tell me who they were. Of course he wouldn't. He said one is kind of a seasoned agent, you know, and not that we had a conversation that this was my first listing appointment. However, I did mention, you know, he knows like I'm fairly new in real estate compared to maybe somebody that's super seasoned. I did mention, you know, one of the nice things about me is I live right next door, so I'm available pretty much anytime to show your property. And also, do you think that I might be able to give your property more attention than somebody that has like 15 listings? And he's like, no, you make a really good point. And, you know, he said, you know, I get it. You're hungry. Like you really want to help. And he's like, my daughter highly recommended you. So that carries a lot of weight. And I've been really like impressed, but he just won't sign with me. And I even dropped off a CMA yesterday, and I talked to him again, and he's like, I felt like I shouldn't push it because I didn't want to like turn him off to be too pushy, but I keep like trying to stay top of mind and just like keep connecting with him to be available. And I told him I would be a resource if he needs, like, is it okay if I check in with you in 3 to 4 weeks and kind of see where you're at? And he just gave me an excuse of, well, it takes me long to do everything. You know, I was wanting to list it in September, and he just gave me an excuse like they're slow to do everything. So I was just wanting your perspective on all that.
So, I mean, there's a couple things. I'll go through it briefly, and then I would say talk to who's your coach? Is it Andy or
Andy? Yep, Andy.
Okay. Yeah, I would talk to Andy about it too. Just a couple of quick things based on what you said. Number one, the time frame it sounds like the time frame is longer than you would typically be. So number one is that if they're not looking to list till September, there isn't necessarily
No. They wanted to list last September. So he was basically telling, yeah. And then I asked him, you know, how soon could, like, if somebody presented you an offer, like immediately, what's your timeline? What are you guys thinking? And they said, well, we'd like to be out by, we could be out by April, but ideally we have guests coming. So May, but if we got a great offer, we would figure it out in April.
Jesus Christ.
And they're going to stay with their family. They bought a property that they're going to build on. And yeah, so it's like, I don't know. And then he told me he would sign. One more thing that's really important. He told me he would sign on the dotted line with me to list if I brought him a buyer.
Yeah. Okay. So then you explain that you're not able to market the property and bring him a buyer without having a signed listing agreement.
Yeah, that I can only talk to people within my agency.
Yeah, well, you would also need to have an agreement signed for that purpose, but that's actually a great point, and that's a great possible follow-up. So one of the things you can work to get an in-house listing initially for a certain period of time and try to get an agreement signed that way. You can also offer to contact the other agents that he has the appointment scheduled with to let them know that, you know, that he's listing with you, because sometimes he feels an obligation. They feel an obligation. You can also have them sign the listing, find out when they're going to meet with the other agents, get a specific date and get them committed to that within the next couple of days and say, okay, when are you going to have your appointments by? And say it's Friday. Okay, great. We're going to take this listing. Why don't we go ahead and sign a listing to start on Saturday or Sunday or whatever day that is? You can call me in the meantime if you choose to go with somebody else or there's any other questions you have. And then we'll void the listing. We'll cancel it. So you can tweak it and give them an out. Those are just a couple of strategies.
Okay. He doesn't even know. Like, he's like, I haven't even really talked to the agents. I don't even know when I'm going to sit down with them.
So then I would try to get him.
It might be a month or two from now. That's what he's telling me.
So I would try to pin him down and get the listing for the day after whatever date he agrees to. But you got to get him pinned down, because if it's ambiguous like that, yeah, that's a tough battle.
Okay.
Anybody else have a thought for Baron? And then I would talk to Andy about it.
Pushy is
Okay.
good. Realtor trait. Pushy is good, and it helps to be the last appointment.
I know, which I was like, oh, I'm the first. Oh no.
But you can be the first if you can get them to sign. So sometimes it's good to be the first if you can get them to cancel the other 2 appointments. So it depends on the person and the situation. The other thing
Right.
is, if you went through the entire, you want to make sure that you're following. Did you give them a pre-listing packet?
I did a listing presentation.
Okay, so there is
yeah.
a pre-listing packet I would look at too, which we have
Okay.
for KW. Once,
Okay.
if you give that to them before, that helps your position to get them to prep them to that they're going to be signing the listing when you meet with them. So there's a couple
Okay.
other little things we can do. It sounds like you asked good questions at the closing. You're doing great. I mean, yeah, Stacy says stick to it. So
I gave him the
can
CMA.
also-
I mean, he like.
So
wanted
this
me-
might be a good topic for our next week.
Okay.
Let me just write this down for listing
Yeah, you can-
presentations as an additional topic, and then we'll go deeper into that. Sorry, we got to jump
Thank
off. 'cause we
you.
gotta
No,
staff meeting.
sorry. I just
But
thought I would
No,
ask.
no, thank you. That's a good question. And Dan's also a great person to talk to. I mean, the guy is a rock star with listings. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah, you're on the right track. We'll focus on that for you though.
Okay. Thank you. I really
All right,
appreciate
you
it.
guys. All right, thank you guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Don't forget to sign up for family reunion. Call
Okay.
me. Thanks.
Yeah, family reunion. Call Stacy. Okay,
Thank
bye.
you.